Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome back to the Onyx Tavern Vlog series on Russia Sentai ToQger. I'm your host, Rick the Barkeep, and today let's talk about station number 36, Dreams Get a Perfect 100. So again, this is another good episode of the series. It seems in the latter half of ToQger, thus far, again, 3 out of 4 episodes, they're getting better. I don't know what this is attributed to, whether it's really just the writing, the fact that it was always designed this way to start off slow and then get better towards the end, or something behind the scenes in middle of production changed a couple of things. But whatever it is, I'm really enjoying a lot of these episodes, mainly because the episodes that we've had, other than Station 34, have been about character development and focusing towards the main plot of the series, which again is finding their home, liberating their home, and reuniting with their families. Because defeating the Shadow Line obviously is the main goal, but for our characters, this is their personal goals that they want to go ahead and achieve. So, what's the story about today? Well, basically, they're stopping off in a low college town, and Hikari remembers that one of their sensei actually goes to college here. And he figures that if he's able to go ahead and find her, that she will be able to lead them to their hometown. And, hey, what happened? How do we get there? What do we got to do next? So, finding the sensei is the crux of the story, to find out what she knows and how they can go ahead and get there. Now, the episode kind of ends. It's kind of bittersweet, to be quite honest, because our goal was, again, to find the sensei to lead us to our hometown, because, again, this is something I've kind of argued about, a little bit earlier in the series, is that there are people who live in the town, people who commute to the town, people who've moved away, people who have friends in this town. And if the Shadow Line is to take over the town, then there's got to be somebody that knows about it. Again, that's in the book somewhere, that you can search for it on the internet, that there is some record out there. What we've seen of liberated Shadow Towns is that they have disappeared physically and are frozen in time, but that doesn't justify the reason why nobody would remember them. Now, of course, this episode clears up a few of those things. Honestly, this should have been something that was introduced earlier in the series. Nevertheless, here it is, and we'll talk about it, in broad strokes here. But again, the reason the ending is bittersweet is they don't find their town. They do learn a little bit more about, what's going on and stuff. But this is really the story of Hikari and his effect on Sakura Sensei. Now, Hikari does not change in this story, which is fine because Hikari does not need to change. Typically, you have two types of protagonists, the ones that do change within a story and those who refuse to change within a story. And depending on what type of story that you're trying to go ahead and tell, either is going to be effective. Hikari does not need to change. He's right where he needs to be, I think, in terms of story. Does he still have things to learn? Yes. But this episode shows that being who he is and the personality that he has, he can affect change in others, which is just as good, because that's exactly what's happening with Sakura Sensei in this, is that he's affecting change into her as opposed to change upon himself. So the ending is positive for Sakura Sensei, but not for the ToQger. They don't really get any closer to finding their hometown, so it is kind of a waste, but again, it's got character stories within there, and we learn a little bit more as the audience, not to mention ToQger, on what exactly is happening with the Shadow Towns and explaining that in a little bit more detail for us, which again was not available before. So, they go to this university and they're trying to find Sakura Sensei, and I have to go ahead and point out here that they do it in the most inefficient means possible. They go to town and they just walk around trying to find her. Which, okay, I know they're 8 years old, but at some point, don't you think they would have learned, let's go to the admissions office, let's go to campus security, let's go to the front desk, maybe we can ask somebody if they know who this girl is. Because not once do they actually ask anybody, they just kind of walk around expecting to recognize her. And it's only through sheer dumb luck that Hikari really recognizes her based on the change that has happened in the episode. But while they're looking for Sakura, they do find this ink shadow, ink pen shadow, I think is what the exact translation is. And basically, what he does is he goes around grading the students on mundane things, basically giving them zeros, because the logic of the episode is that students are taught their entire life to get good grades, and if they get zeros, they are devastated and thus will create darkness. This is really a biting commentary over the educational system in Japan. It really seems that way. Because, of course, everybody, hears about, importance of standardized tests over there and getting into college and always getting good grades and stuff. A lot of it's stereotypical. A lot of it is actually true, of course. But this episode really takes it to the extreme that giving people zeros is going to create darkness. Which I'm not really sure what it's trying to go ahead and say about the educational system in general. Honestly, this would actually be a really good episode to adapt in the Power Rangers, because of just where we are in the educational system right now. Because I don't think No Child Left Behind is still a thing now, but schools are always focusing on standardized testing. And if you don't get good grades, then it's going to haunt you for the rest of your life. So there is a little bit of that cultural connection between Japan and the United States. Nevertheless, again, there is some sort of commentary there, but I think there's so much else to talk about in this episode, as far as commentary on certain things, that I think the education thing is great to talk about, but in spite of other stuff, I'm just going to go ahead and skip that for right now, but it's just really interesting. And I will also point out that his method of doing this is basically painting a giant zero and then shoving it upon them, and puts them in this funk, but also kind of changes them in a way. Like he goes to a classroom and there's this guy with a typical Japanese popular hairstyle, and he says, "Your hairstyle gets a zero," and it changes to what I assume is a Beatles hairstyle. I don't know anything about hair and all that, but thank goodness they pointed out the stupidity of those types of haircuts here in Japan. Too bad they're not changing Wright's hairstyle, because his is just as bad. But I digress on that. Let's actually talk a little bit more about some things in this episode before I get to Sakura and kind of what's going on there, and the commentary I have for that. First of all, Akira is proactively doing something in this episode. He is out for the majority of it except for the fight. Now, nobody knows what he is doing in this episode. Obviously, he's doing whatever it is that he promised to Schwartz. That's not elaborated upon, but he is taken out of the story for reasons, obviously, for good reasons, and we'll of course know what that is. But of course, now the ToQger are questioning what's going on. But the conductor and Ticket don't really seem to be as worried about what Akira is doing. I guess he's out on his own, and he's been like that all season. Nevertheless, they don't seem bothered by this, that he just somehow got the drill rush back, and now he's all quiet and off doing his own thing. Not to mention, the conductor is acting a little strange in this episode. And that's saying something. He's just got these weird little quirks where he rubbed his nose, or he's like talking to the microphone all yawning, and like he can't be bothered with what's going on and stuff. I don't know what it is. We haven't seen anything to affect his change, but he is acting rather weird in this episode. I just can't put my finger on it. To figure out what's going on here. So let's get into okay, I want to talk about the Shadow Towns right now, because again, there's so much to talk about Sakura Sensei that I really do need to talk about this other stuff, I think, before we get into the meat of this episode, or at least what I feel is the meat of it. But when they find Sakura, she cannot remember the ToQger town. She doesn't remember going there, she doesn't remember being there, and she even looks up on her cell phone their town, but can't find it anywhere. So basically what this episode is saying is that when the Shadow Line takes over, not only does it disappear from the map, not only do people freeze in time, but apparently knowledge is erased of this particular town. I read a very interesting story online one time where this girl finds a genie in her mirror, And the genie basically explains his powers like this, is that when he makes a change in the world, it is accepted. Like, if you make a wish and say, I want to have $10 million, and suddenly you have $10 million, people are going to question that. You have to report on your taxes. Your bank's going to be suspicious when you deposit such a large amount. It's going to be a weird thing. It's going to cause more trouble than it does good. But the way this genie in this story works is that he alludes it to a pebble being dropped in a pond. That when the pebble drops, the water doesn't simply move out of its way and create a big hole for the pebble to fall into, but rather the water wraps and reshapes itself because, water has a, flowing form around the rock to where the rest of the water no longer becomes disturbed by its presence. So, using that particular logic here, basically what's saying is the town has been wiped from the map, and all knowledge of it has been erased from existence. And thus, because of this, not only are people's memories altered, but even people's destinies, their life paths, and the things that they're doing are altered as well. Which is how we get into Sakura Sensei, which, again, let me talk about that here in a second. But, again, this is information we should have known at the beginning of the season, because everything I've been saying is, why aren't they researching this, asking people, and things like that? This is an episode really should have been the first 10 episodes, or maybe at least after the introduction of our 6 Rangers, simply because this is something that we've been asking all season long, and here we are, episode 36, and we're now just kind of getting this full commentary on what's happening. We're getting this explanation for it. Again, this is something that we needed to know a little bit earlier. Because, again, what have I been talking about the whole time is that the logic of the ToQger and the Rainbow line doesn't really make any sense. Like I've said before, the trains can't be seen by people, yet they're fighting downtown with giant explosions and knocking down buildings, so is that invisible to people? That is still something we don't have an explanation on, even in this particular episode. So reality is being altered to fit the script more than it is to fit the narrative. Because, yeah, it's great that Hikari has this idea and it ultimately becomes a failure because they don't, because the nature of the shadow line, it alters reality, basically. But again, why should it alter reality? Why isn't there some sort of plague around Japan? It's like all these towns are starting to disappear. Again, that could have been a good B story with what's going on with the main story, but I digress on all that. Ultimately, my point I'm trying to make here is that what they're doing should have been told earlier. It's really to serve the story, to serve the script as opposed to the story, because it really should have been handled a little bit differently. But I'm not really going to hold that much against it. The only thing I'm confused about is the Shao Towns. Once they're taken over, they are frozen in time, and that's not really explained in this episode either, but maybe that's something we'll get down the line, because keep in mind that the length of ToQger is probably about, let's say, 9 months to a year, because I know there's a Christmas episode coming up. I saw that in the episode guide, and we know they started in a relatively cold time of year, so basically the in-universe time is probably going to be equal to real-world time, meaning, again, 9 months to a year as far as their out there, but this time actually freeze within the Shadow Town itself. And what happens when they are unfrozen? That really wasn't expanded upon the first time it happened, and I'm hoping that we can get to it later. Okay, so let's get to what I feel to be the most problematic part of this episode, because I don't think they necessarily put this in here with any particular message in mind, but when you look at that combined with what the Ink Shadow is doing within the episode, I'm just really confused. Now, this isn't as offensive as the homosexual stereotyping that we had in Station 34, but it's up there with questionable decisions on what they're doing. So first of all, the Ink Shadow is going around giving people zeros. Again, they gave a guy 0 for a stupid hairstyle, and they gave the ToQger zeros just to depress them and all that kind of stuff, which is, interesting for the story, but I don't want to focus on that too much because it really inconsequential to everything that's happening. But the first victims that we see in the episode are these 2 girls. Now, these girls, I would say are your stereotypical J-pop, girls that would hang out Akihabara, type of women and all that. They got these, pseudo fur coats. They're talking about beauty parlors. They got their cell phones out with all the little jewels on them and stuff. Again, you guys know the stereotype that I'm talking about here. And he gives them a 0 on being feminine. And basically, when he gives them the 0, they transform into basically tracksuits with frizzy afro-like hair. And both of the women, and this is their quote from the translation, and I quote, "We get 0s in terms of being women," unquote. What is this episode trying to say about the nature of femininity? Now, I'm not a feminist. I'm not trying to really get into all that kind of stuff because that's something better left to feminists. But are they? What are they saying? Because the Shadow is saying that they get 0s in being feminine. So are they trying to go ahead and say that being that stereotype, with the cell phone and the beauty power, that is not feminine, that what femininity is just being whatever, being kind of ugly with no makeup and frizzled hair and stuff like that? Or are they trying to go ahead and say that that type of femininity is bad and therefore you should look this way? I mean, I'm not really sure what that particular scene is trying to go ahead and tell us. Now, I could have just dropped that, because it is just one scene. I mean, they talk about the guy's stupid hair in there and talk about Wright getting bad grades and all that kind of stuff, which doesn't faze him. But then it's kind of continued when we actually meet Sakura-sensei. And when Hikari's looking for her, he's got an image in her head of her in, the pantsuit or the skirt suit, whatever you want to go ahead and call it, with a ponytail and glasses, and actually looking like a professional, basically. I mean, that's basically what she looks like. But he goes into the classroom to find her, and finds her looking like one of those two girls that we saw before, where she has, curly hair, wearing a pink coat. She's got a bow in her hair. She's playing on her cell phone. She's got lots of makeup and, makes her eyes look big and all that kind of stuff, which is a complete 180 from what he thought that she would go ahead and be. Which is fine, because it could be, my first thought was, oh, this is what she dresses like all the time, but when she goes into a professional setting, then she dresses like this. Because she was, kind of like, she was there for 2 weeks, and she was practicing to be a teacher, so there's no reason why when she's in class in front of the professor she can look like this, and of course when she goes to work she, looks professional. I mean, heck, I gotta look professional when I head to school here. I wear t-shirts and jeans all the time and stuff, but when I go over to the junior high school, I have to dress up in a shirt and tie every day. So that was my first understanding of the situation when I saw it. But here's where it kind of gets a little weird. So, because the ToQger hometown never existed, she never went there to become a teacher and realize her dream of becoming a teacher, which is, where we get the name of the title, basically. And because she never went and got an experience of being a teacher, she has no dream now. Therefore, she's no longer professional-like looking, whatever. She is one of these J-pop looking girls. And by the end of the episode, when Hikari helps her remember that's what she wants to do, that she wants to be a teacher, she completely changes her look again to that professional, where she is wearing a suit to class, she's wearing a less flamboyant purse, and she's wearing her glasses, and got her hair in a ponytail and all that. And what I'm getting from this episode is it's basically saying if you have no dreams, you have no aspirations, you're going to turn to one of those girls. You're going to be one of those girls with a bow in your hair, always looking on your cell phone, and wearing pink all the time and too much makeup. But if you have a dream and you got to look professional, you got to look like this. You got to go ahead and do that. And I don't know if that's really their intention, really what they're trying to go ahead and say about. Because again, only a few minutes earlier in this episode, we have two girls who were, again, in the J-pop, look and whatever and stuff, and they were told that they were not feminine or that they were bad at being feminine. So are they trying to go ahead and say here that if you dress that way that you are feminine, but if you have aspirations, you should be less feminine? That if you want to be a teacher, you should give up this identity and all that? And what's even kind of odd, she even seems to have a personality shift in there somehow. Is that she goes from being she looks rather ditzy when she's wearing the pink coat and everything, but then she becomes super serious when she's dressed up in the pantsuit and whatnot. I'm not understanding what this episode is trying to say to girls regarding how you should look and what you should go ahead and do with your life. Because again, it sounds like what they're saying is if a girl looks like that, that means she has no dreams, she has no aspirations, she is a loser, she is a failure. That is what this episode is trying to say. But you see that girl over there with the nice coat and the ponytail and the glasses, she has a future. She has dreams and aspirations to achieve things with her life. You should look like that. That's honestly what this episode is trying to go ahead and say, because even with just Sakura, but then you get the other two girls and how they're saying it's almost negative to be that way, that they got zeros for dressing that way, and that you should look like this, you should be different and all that. And again, I don't know how this fits in with femininity, feminism, and all that kind of stuff, but what I see from this is basically saying if you dress like that, you're a loser. If you dress like this, then you got a future to it. And I don't know if this is something that is going on in the Japanese culture, where it is that they don't want girls dressing like that. I mean, where I live, we're in the boondocks and girls don't dress like that. But I'm sure if you go to Tokyo and Kyoto and bigger cities like that, then yeah, you're going to have people dressed like that. And I've seen a bunch of people dressed like that. Just as an aside, I was in the airport in Tokyo, and I saw this blonde girl, and I thought she was American. She turns around, she's straight up Japanese and everything. She looked just like these girls, but with bright blonde hair and all that. So I mean, those women do exist. But if I was to take this episode's logic, am I to look at that girl in the airport and basically say, she has no dreams for the future. She has no aspirations. So she's just going to be a loser her whole life. That's exactly who she is. Moving on. Is that what I'm supposed to go ahead and take from it? I don't think it is. And again, what are the girls going to take from it? I mean, okay, I have a daughter that's too young to go ahead and watch this, but I imagine if they, Japanese men that have daughters that watch ToQger, and statistically, girls do, they have to look at this character and goes, oh no, I should not be like this. I need to be like that. Which, it's kind of, I guess it is. I guess it does come back to feminism. I mean, I'm the worst person to really talk about feminism here. We need to get somebody who probably is a feminist or is really good at talking about it, intellectually speaking. But I just watched it and I'm just like, is that what they're trying to say about this girl? I mean, why can't Sakura dress like she does when she goes to class, but then again, she has to button up when she's got to actually go ahead and teach? I don't understand that. I don't know what they're really trying to go ahead and say here. Are they being sexist in some way, saying that girls shouldn't dress like that, and girls who dress like that aren't worth the time, basically? And again, when the shadow gives zeros to these girls and all that, I mean, I don't know. And again, are we also talking about, when we talk about, okay, so she never went to the town, and she doesn't have this dream. Is that what you look like when you give up on your dreams? When you give up on life? Because that's even something, that's kind of like staying there. She's kind of like giving up on life or something. Like, she's just passing through school, doesn't know what she wants to go ahead and do. And I'll tell you something else. It's actually kind of bold in this episode. Is that the episode says, or she's like, when she meets Hikari for the first time, obviously she doesn't recognize Hikari because he was a little child and now he's, adult and whatnot. And she's like, you look familiar. Did I meet you at the party the other night? I was so drunk. I don't remember. It's very bold for Sentai to actually go ahead and put in there that she got drunk at a party, and the implication is that she made out with a lot of dudes or worse. But again, back to what the theme is. I mean, is that trying to go ahead and say, I mean, was she like that before? Would she go out to parties and get drunk? Or is it because she has no aspirations and no dreams that she is getting drunk? Like, well, I thought I was going to be a teacher, but I don't have that dream anymore. Glug, glug, glug. I mean, is that what the episode's trying to go ahead and say? Because, again, that's even more offensive, that girls who dress like that go out drinking and kiss boys and can't remember who anybody is and stuff like that. again, it's just very confusing what the message is here, and I'm sure there is a message because nothing's in here by accident. I just wonder if my interpretation is different than what their interpretation is. I mean, because what it sounds like is this is a story of a girl who, without being a teacher, she's nothing in life. But as a teacher, she becomes something. I mean, why couldn't it be that she wants to be an actress or something like that, or she wants to be an artist of some kind, or she wants to be a mathematician, or maybe she has a passion of driving long haul trucks across the country or something? I mean, heck, when we get in the Ninja next season, we have one of the characters who takes his CDL license before he finishes high school. Wouldn't it be an interesting twist if like her dreams were to like be a truck driver, and of course Hikari's like, follow your dream, be a truck driver. I mean, I don't know, people. It's just a lot of interesting things that are going on here, and I really don't know what to go ahead and say about it. Um, let's see. Do I have any other notes on this particular episode? Um, Again, I think what really has taken over in this episode is, I mean, again, it's a good story, but I have to criticize its interpretation of women, femininity, and what they're trying to say about Sakura Sensei, and really just, I think, women in general in Japan, based on how they dress and what it is they want to do with their lives. That's what I'm ultimately seeing here. So I think I've prowled on enough about that. But this is a topic I'm really curious to know what everybody else thinks about this. So I would really like to have you guys leave your comments on this one. And again, just kind of tell me what you think. I want to see if you guys picked up on that as well, or if it's maybe something that I've picked up on. Or again, maybe I am reading it wrong. What did you guys read into it? I certainly would like to go ahead and know. But we'll get on to Station 37 next time. But until then, I want to thank you guys for listening. Have a good evening, and the tavern is now closed.